My name is Ginger. Why that is, no one has asked for a long time. And those who knew either forgot or pretended not to know. Once upon a time, this name sounded in offices where fates were decided. Once upon a time, it was the name of a person who could change the direction of the wind, or at least make the calm down even more. Now, I am a shadow. I live in an old house on the northern outskirts of the city. The facade is covered with moss, the walls are slowly surrendering to time. But inside, everything is tidy. I love order. The only mess is silence. It is everywhere. In the closets, in the drops falling from the faucet, in the TV, where the sound has been turned off for several years. I don't need voices. I've already listened to them all my life. My children live in the center, in skyscrapers that I once helped build. One is a financier, the second is a marketing specialist, the third is happily married in the USA. They call, once a month, to check if I hadn't left this world yet and if I needed to decorate something. My granddaughter Nadia once sent me a selfie with the words, "Grandpa, I love you." It was as warm as a plastic flower pot. They don't look at me in the store. On the bus, they stand next to me and talk loudly on the phone as if I didn't exist. Once I dropped a can of beans. It rolled under the feet of a man in a suit. He didn't bend over. He stepped over. In the hospital, a nurse defiantly threw at the doctor, "Nothing will help this anymore, old man." And I remembered her eyes. Brown cold. I drink tea. The same variety for 16 years. I cover myself with a blanket embroidered by my wife. She died 10 years ago. And I die gradually every day. Not the body, it still holds on. Authority dies. The memory of you in the eyes of others dies. I was once a giant. And now, they don't give me change at the pharmacy because they think I won't notice. I'm silent. I listen. I notice. What they don't see, I write down. I haven't disappeared. I just haven't spoken yet. I wasn't always a shadow. I once managed those who manage everyone today. They called me Ginger, not because of my hair color, I lost it in the early 2000s. But because I burn. Gently, but without mercy. In the 90s, when everyone was either stealing or running away, I took responsibility. Partners betrayed. Tax collectors broken without a warrant. Competitors poisoned papers. And I collected everything into a fist. I was no saint, but I never descended to meanness. I believed in the power of words, the power of honor, and the power of action. My business started in a garage. The first batch of goods was on borrowed money and the risk of lost sleep. Then trucks, contracts, partners from Germany. Then a warehouse, then a company. My wife used to say, "Ginger, you're not a person, you're an element." I laughed. But damn it, she was right. When my daughter wanted to study in London, I sold a plot of land. When my son got into debt because of gambling, I gave away his car to get him out. No one found out. I covered up. Because I was their rear, even if they didn't see it. One night, when they tried to kick me out of the market, I didn't call the police. I called a man with whom I once shared a piece of bread in the darkest times. In an hour, the matter was closed. I didn't need my fists, my memory was enough. And then, everything changed. They grew up. They started saying, "Dad, times are not the same anymore. Leave this old model. You're complicating everything." Over time, they stopped asking. Then they stopped consulting. Then the phone went silent. I remember every night when I sat by the window, waiting for them to call. And every morning, when I was ashamed of my waiting. Because leaders don't wait. But parents do. Once I knew how to keep everything under control. Today, I only have a pen and a notebook. And in them I record not the past. I record the true face of everyone. Because the truth is a currency that no one can devalue. They think that I have forgotten. That I have turned gray and faded. But they are wrong. My memory is more accurate than any register. And it has not yet said its last word. Real pain is not always loud. It doesn't scream or break your ribs. It comes in little things. And it's the little things that cut the deepest. Hello, Dad, I can't right now. I'll call you back. He's not calling you back. This is my son, Roman. He's 47. He runs a branch of the company that used to be mine. In the office is my furniture. On the wall is a certificate with my last name, but it's already been erased. I don't call often. Only when despair becomes higher than pride. But each of my calls is like a petty crime for which I'm punished with indifference. Grandpa, why do you need this? My grandson asks when I ask him to show me how to use a smartphone. What do you want, to shoot TikTok? He laughs. I smile. But something inside me breaks. I once taught him to read. He gnawed the first alphabet on my lap. Now I am backward, old, useless. In the hospital, I have difficulty breathing. I am waiting for my next appointment. The nurse, without looking, throws to the doctor. Yes, it's the same one. An old man with asthma. He's here again. I'm standing nearby. I hear everything. The doctor doesn't even raise his head. He writes something out mechanically and hands me the card without a word. I say thank you. He is silent. On the street, I picked up the package. The wind tore it from my hands. People walk by. A young man steps over it, and over me, with coffee in his hands, without even looking. I bend down slowly, my knees cracking. The package tears. The oranges fall apart. No one helps. And I look. And I remember. And I write it down. There are already 47 names in my diary. Without emotions, without judgments. Only facts. Who? When? How? I am humiliated not with a fist, but with a look from above. Ignoring. Sarcasm. In the usual tone of voice that you speak to a dog. Well, old man, be quiet. But I'm not a dog. I'm a wolf. Old, yes. But not blind. And not tamed. I walk down the same street every day, in the same coat, with the same cane. But inside I'm not the same anymore. My soul is not quiet. It's clenched into a fist. This pain won't break. It's accumulating. Like water behind a dam. And very soon, it will break through. I fell. In the middle of the market. The tea bag slipped out of the bag tore, the bottle of mineral water rolled under the stall. I couldn't keep my balance, my leg twisted, the cane broke. And I found myself on the ground. My knees hurt. My palm was torn. But that wasn't what hurt. Ha, look, it's falling apart. Go, don't touch it, it'll stink. Mom, is he dead? It was loud. It was public. It was the bottom. I heard two people laughing as they passed by. One gave me a look, the same look I once gave at the chewing gum stuck to the sole of my shoe. And someone else whispered, "No one needs it." Oh, that word. It was like someone's hand had reached under my ribs and broken a key. No one. No. Needs it. It rang in my head louder than any gunshot. I got up slowly. Alone. I gathered up the rest of the packages. I looked at the people. They had already dispersed. Predators of everyday life, busy with their own existence. I walked home in silence. But inside, there was no longer silence. What I had been holding back for years burst out. Not rage. Not hysteria. Not tears. But clarity. Icy. Logical. Dangerous. At home, I went to the pantry. I pushed aside the old cupboard. The key was still under the threshold. The safe opened with a hoarse click. There was an old Nokia phone, a notebook with black leatherette, and several flash drives. I sat down at the table, covered in dust. I blew. I began to remember. Write out. Build. The game had begun. I will not hit. I will not shout. I will not demand recognition. I will take what has always been mine, control. I knew how the world works. I myself once taught my children how to use the weaknesses of others. Now, I saw their weaknesses: pride, laziness, craving for status. And I had people. 10, 20 more, those I had helped in the past. Someone lives in Prague. Someone has a server in Cyprus. One is a former police officer. Another is an IT guy I pulled off the street. They thought I was old, that I didn't know how to use the internet. And I was studying. At night, I created an anonymous account. I downloaded the archive. I deployed the schemes. This is not revenge, as they imagine. This is restoring balance. I don't want their pain. I want them to see themselves, the real ones. And they can no longer lie, to themselves or to the world. They don't call me grandfather anymore, because I'm gone. Or rather, the person I was thought to be doesn't exist. I erased myself from official life. I removed my number from the registers. I changed my delivery address. I refused visits from social assistants. I became invisible, officially. But in the shadows, I became visible again. For those who once feared my voice, my instructions, my eyes. Every move was calculated. I started with Roman, my son. His company withdrew funds through a charitable foundation registered in his wife's name. Everything was clean, until the documents appeared. Old contracts, signatures, correspondence, anonymous complaint, anonymous leak. A week later, audit. A month later, dismissal. By consent. Although everyone knew it wasn't his will. The newspapers wrote, "Well-known financier leaves post after internal investigation." He called me the next day. 5 times. I didn't answer. I was drinking tea. No sugar. I listened as the bell fell silent. And silence again. My silence. My weapon. Then my grandson, Sasha. He was accepted into a prestigious program based on falsified achievements. I didn't do anything special. I just sent the organizers a recording where he himself, laughing, calls himself a star of bluff. When the video hit the network, the internet did everything for me. Sasha was expelled. Partners distanced themselves. The advertising contract was cancelled. His stories from the ball disappeared. His page became empty. Next were a doctor, a nurse, the same officials who once wrote me off as an old psycho. A mirror for each. Through documents, witnesses, records, former patients, I returned to them their own truth. And most importantly, the fear that they no longer control who is pulling the strings. My home became the center of operations. I pulled out old laptops, connected cables, flash drives, went to TOR, contacted those who owed me a favor for a long time. I didn't ask. I ordered silently, with arguments. And they served me. Everything without shouting. Without a scene. Only consequences. And calls that went unanswered. The children began to worry. "Dad, where have you disappeared to?" "We'll come, are you okay?" They arrived. They sat in the kitchen, like children who are afraid of punishment. I was silent. I watched. They spoke. They made excuses. They complained. They made excuses again. And I just watched. And behind every phrase I saw fear. Fear that does not recognize itself. Fear that they never felt until they started to lose control. My answer was silence. But it weighed more than any condemnation. They gathered in my house for the first time in many years. They sat in silence. Like once when their mother died. There was silence on their faces. But not out of respect. Out of fear. Roman was crumpling something in his hands. Keys? Paper? His daughter was looking at the floor. Sasha sat with his hands on the phone, but didn't press anything. Even he understood that now was a different level of the game. "Dad," Roman said, "we were busy. We didn't know that you." I looked up. Just a look. No words. And that was enough. He froze. He hesitated. He looked at me like he used to, a 5-year-old boy who broke my watch and didn't know if he would be punished. Grandpa! Sasha exhaled. And for the first time, he looked me in the eyes, really. Without arrogance. Without jokes. I didn't say anything. Because there was no need. My silence already said everything. And it didn't demand forgiveness. It didn't expect gratitude. I returned to the table. I sat down. I picked up an old diary. I flipped through a few pages. I wrote down a single phrase. The most powerful thing is not to punish, but to show the truth. And leave. I do not forgive. But I do not rage either. My revenge is not blood. It is knowledge. It is a mirror. Their actions are not my flaw. It is their portrait. I only highlighted the frame. Because old age is not decline. It is an imperceptible height from which everyone can be seen. And that is why it is so frightening. I do not put a period. Because I do not need it. The world will do it itself. I simply rise. And leave. And no one dares to call me unnecessary anymore. The world has forgotten who I was. But I reminded. Not with a shout. Not with a fist. But with a silence that breaks pride. Because he who demands nothing can take everything. I was written off. And I agreed. To become someone who cannot be erased.
Subscribe and like this video, more interesting revenge stories of elderly people coming soon.